y'all? This is going to be my response to this statement by Nick Aldis, NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, the holder of Sweet Charlotte. Anyway, he did an interview with Cultaholic, or sometimes I call him Cuntaholic, and he said something very important. NWA star Nick Aldis wants the fetishizing of Japanese wrestling to end. So he said, throughout his career, NWA World's Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis has wrestled all over the world. He has faced off against Colt Cabana in China, Brad Slayer at Carrow Road in Norwich, England, and he and Samoa Joe even reigned as GHC Tag Team Champions in Pro Wrestling Noah. During a recent appearance on Straight to Hell with Cultaholic's Ross Tweddle, Aldis revealed one of the things that annoys him the most in professional wrestling is the fetishizing of Western wrestling fans towards Japanese wrestling, whereby those who follow Japanese wrestling think they're better than those who do not, and that anything in wrestling is better simply because it happened in Japan. Ho ho ho! This is so true. Wait a minute. Let's continue, because let's just say that's true. I'm going to put a pin in it, and we're going to come back to this. The National Treasure said, I really want to qualify this point before I make it because I know the clickbaiters are going to pick this up and turn it into something it's not. But I need the Western wrestling obsession with Japanese wrestling to just calm down a bit. I've wrestled in Japan. I love going to Japan, but I'll be honest with you. I don't love wrestling in Japan because it hurts. It's really physically taxing, and I don't get the same adrenaline rush from it because the audience don't react. It's like I'm killing myself, and it's like clapping. What I mean by this, I understand and respect that they have their own thing, and there are some guys who are phenomenal, and there are some who are some of the best ever, legends. But it works for their culture. It works for that audience. Whew. This is good. And I'm just so over this snobby sort of misconception that has sort of bled into the overall lexicon of modern wrestling, that somehow if it's Japanese, it's better. Like, this is how they do it in Japan. What I'm talking is this sort of almost fetishizing of anything that's Japanese, and somehow that makes it better. The ironic thing is, you're working the audience because most of them have never been to Japan. They've never been in a Japanese audience. They're not Japanese. They've just been co-opted to believe, oh, it's Japanese, it must be better. I better agree, or everyone else will think I'm stupid, or everyone will think I'm not elevated enough as a wrestling fan. I'm not knowledgeable enough. It's this sort of weird, snobby sort of culture that exists now. Holy shit. And this is so true. It's true as fuck. Oh, is that it? That it? Okay. All right. This is the Meltzerization of wrestling. Okay. That's what this is. This happens because of Dave Meltzer. There are tape traders and certain people like that, but they don't have the influence. There is a lot of people who trade tapes, All Japan tapes, New Japan tapes, all that type of stuff. They just didn't have the influence. Dave Meltzer has the influence where if something happens in Japan, all of a sudden it's the best thing ever. Just recently, he's kind of starting to shift that a little bit with the AEW stuff. But there's a lot of talk, about certain things that if it happens in Japan, all of a sudden is really great. It's really awesome. Like every match being 30 minutes. That we don't need that in the United States. I can't take it. I can't deal with that. People not having gimmicks and not really having characters, and the Japanese, they have the aesthetic, right? Where everybody, Evil comes out in the full gear, but how does that work into his character? It doesn't. Unlike Taichi, who, sometimes will cheat and use the microphone or something like that. Evil doesn't use this big ass scythe that he comes to the ring with. He just carries it to the ring. It's like, why does he have a big ass scythe and he doesn't use it? Because they have a sports based style in Japan, and that sports based style is not conducive to him actually utilizing any of the things that he's known for or any of his gimmicks. But I think that's a fair criticism. Japan is also very difficult for certain people to get over. It's actually, in some ways it's easier for certain people to get over. In other ways, it's harder for certain people to get over. It's easier kind of for certain American, let's say Western performers to get over. Typically, the white guys. Okay, people like who you don't need to have a lot of charisma. You can get over based on your athleticism alone. This is with people like Will Ospreay, who I keep hearing is the greatest wrestler in the world and all that bullshit. But when I watch a Will Ospreay match, I end up yawning. Like, okay, it's great gymnastics, but why do I care? Like, what is the emotional investment in this? Like, his match with Takahashi was pretty good because the emotional investment was in Takahashi's return, not in anything Will Ospreay was doing. You could have replaced Will Ospreay with just about anybody, and I probably would have still been interested in that match. But to the Japanese, of course, it might have been the same thing. It might have been like a dream match. Because, and again, a lot of these people started saying that Kenny Omega was the greatest wrestler of all time, and he was having 7-star classics with Okada, and Okada's the greatest wrestler of all time, and he's not even 30, or he's not even 35, or some shit. Tanahashi's the greatest wrestler of all time. Masawa's the greatest wrestler of all time. Everybody is, a tag team match between any two guys anywhere on the planet. As long as it happened in Japan, it's the greatest match of all time. That shit comes from Meltzer. Okay, when you look at his Hall of Fame stuff, there's a bunch of Japanese people nobody ever heard of that people feel like they have to vote for because, well, again, like Nick Aldis said, you feel like, this is what I call Japanese wrestling. I know it took me too long to get here, but it's like vegetables. It's like you have to. It's expected that you like it, okay? And I like Japanese wrestling because I like wrestling. Period. I watch just about anything. But the idea that Japanese wrestling is vastly superior to American wrestling is like, where did that come from? That comes from peer pressure of people being told that this match at Wrestle Kingdom is, and this happens every year. Like, people will watch Wrestle Kingdom and then say, oh, it's better than WrestleMania, even though WrestleMania is 3 months later. And then they won't watch New Japan again until the G1 climax. They won't care what happens between January and fucking October. And then tell you that the Japanese wrestling is the best wrestling of all time. Everybody is the best wrestler of all time. Anything that happens in Japan is the best wrestling of all time. For starters, I keep hearing that WWE doesn't know how to make any new stars. I say, okay, well, how many new stars have New Japan made? Since Okada started winning titles, Okada has been the champion most of the time. The only other person who's allowed really to be the champion is Tanahashi, and for a short while, Kenny Omega. That was it. Jay White had the title for a little bit, but they took the title off of him. Sonata got beat. He got over. They beat him twice in 1 year. Kota Ibushi, they beat him twice in back-to-back days. And just imagine if that would have happened in America. Just imagine if WWE had gotten a guy like Kota Ibushi over, super over, the way that Kota Ibushi is over in Japan, and beat him on back-to-back nights. Just imagine what would have happened. Imagine the amount of complaining. People, see, The Fiend was the champion from, September to February? That's a couple of months. It's not that long. But he had a nice little run. He was, he works more than just once a week. So he was working the main events all that time, and they decided, okay, well, we're going to take the title off and put it on Goldberg, and take the title off Goldberg and put it on Roman or whatever. People blew their fucking lids, because a guy lost a match. Like, people lose matches. It's not that big of a deal. But no matter what happens in Japan, it's almost always okay. For instance, Kenta, who is now all of a sudden back to being Kenta, even though a lot of people were saying, like, oh, well, WWE ruined Kenta. Like, Kenta's shoulders didn't ruin Kenta. And all of a sudden he goes back to Japan where, he's a native and he speaks the native language, and he kind of starts to get back over, even though he had to join the Bullet Club to do it, which made no sense. But, everybody is expected to just believe that Kenta is back to his old self. He's not. Okay? He's not. I don't care if he jumped Tetsuya Naito, and he's just not. He's still not the Kenta when he was in Pro Wrestling Noah. He's just not the same thing. And then you have it's just this has really energized me, because this is 100% true. I'm expected to believe that Tomohiro Ishii is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. The fact that every fucking match is the same. He does nothing but shoulders, not shoulders, forearms, hoorah, 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 back and forth with the slaps and the forearms, and that shit is every fucking match, yo. That shit is every match. That dude is boring as fucking shit, but I keep having to hear how great he is, because, well, he has high energy matches and they're very physical. I'm like, who the fuck cares? He's boring. I would much rather watch Taichi. I think Taichi is entertaining because I can get into his character. Taichi is lip syncing on his way to the ring. You know, he's controlling the crowd. He actually feels like a heel. Back when I used to watch New Japan all the time, like I have not watched New Japan since Wrestle Kingdom, since Naito won the title. So I don't know what's going on right now, but when I was watching New Japan regularly, Taichi felt like the only real heel on the program. He was the only guy that was going out of his way to cheat, like literally cheat even when he didn't have to. You know, he just felt he was entertaining. He wasn't entertaining in a silly way all the time, but he was entertaining in a delusional heel kind of way. And he doesn't get any opportunities or whatever, but I always found myself entertained by Taichi, and I would say all the time, like, Taichi is based. Like, I became a big fan of Sonata. A lot of people hate Sonata. I don't know why. I wasn't tainted by Sonata's run in TNA. I didn't think that, he was the same guy. People grow up, they get better. They get worse too, but they get better at things. And I'm not easily bought into the whole Chris Jericho stuff. Like, Jericho's experience in Japan to me has been just him brawling outside the ring and then, making sure he get his 2 or 3 spots that he can actually still do, which is one of them is the lion salt. He had to make sure he get that right. And, that's why he came up with this very clever back elbow finish because, he doesn't really want to do that much anymore, which, he's Chris Jericho. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to do a lot. But I'm constantly told that everything Jericho does in Japan is great, that the Painmaker is the best gimmick in the world, even though it doesn't make any sense. It's not even a fully formed idea. Even though I did enjoy his match with Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom, I did enjoy that. And because I enjoyed the way Tanahashi actually played into it and, did other things along with Jericho. I thought that was great. But, yeah, Nick Aldis is absolutely correct. He is absolutely correct. And the comment section, I found this on Twitter. The comment section underneath this tweet proves what Nick Aldis is saying. Because people are saying like, oh, well, the crowd don't react to you, Nick, because you're boring. You suck. And it's like, well, is Nick Aldis the best wrestler in the world? No. Is he the most exciting wrestler in the world? No. But you can at least deal with his argument. Look at what he's saying and argue for yourself. It says, they've just been co-opted to believe, oh, it's Japanese, it must be better. That's true. That's true. They do work a more physical style, and that physical style does put more age on your body than it should. Nakamura, Shinsuke Nakamura, right now in the U.S., he's not an old guy. But Nakamura has been in Japan, wrestling in Japan and doing MMA fights, and they had him doing shoot fights and shit. Like, Nakamura is basically like, he's like, Japanese wrestling ages you in dog years. It's the same thing with Kushida. The language barrier could be holding them back, even though it's not really fucking with Asuka that much anymore. But, Nakamura's body has been beat to shit. Like, why would he going to come to the United States and take that same beating that he was taking in Japan? Like, he wanted to be able to get over on his character and his personality. I look at Shinsuke Nakamura like he is the Chris Jericho of New Japan. You know what I'm saying? Like, Jericho left America to go to Japan so he can get over on his personality and not have to do that much. And get over on being, I'm Chris Jericho. Now Shinsuke Nakamura comes from Japan to the United States to basically be like, okay, I can do, my Michael Jackson shuffles and do my high energy Japanese guy stuff. I can get over on my personality and my charisma and, being a good natured guy. I don't have to go out there and get dumped on my head every single week, which is ironic because Braun Strowman dumped Shinsuke Nakamura on his head. But I look at them as two sides to the same coin. Both of them are, older and beat up. Jericho's, of course, older than Nakamura. I think he's like 13 years older than him. But they worked a certain style. Where Jericho worked in the WWE, where he could get over on his personality and not have to work a physical style. He didn't have to do, like, some of that stuff he had to do with, we had ladder matches and stuff like that. But mostly Jericho could get over on doing a talking segment on Raw, and that's perfectly fine. There is no equivalent to that in New Japan. You have to work a match, you know? But these sorts of things are cultural differences that people don't take into account. They just do assume that if something is good in Japan, therefore is good. And you know, it's this is I can take this to the next level also, because this also happens between manga and comic books, where I'm expected to believe all manga is better than all comic books, which is not the case. You know, there's a lot of useless manga out there that people really swear by that, you know, to me, and I'm gonna catch some heat for this from the manga readers, but Hunter x Hunter, fuck it, okay? The app, fuck it, okay? One Piece, fuck it. It's just too long. Now, you know, at least with Spider-Man, it reboots, so you can get a chance to catch up. There's no way I'm starting One Piece from the very beginning and being 300, 400 pages, 300, 400 chapters behind. That's absolute nonsense. The benefit of a manga is that it has a beginning, middle, and end. Unlike, you know, American comic books where you might have 100 different number ones and all that type of stuff, different jumping on points. But there are things like One Piece where it just goes on forever. Berserk is another one where people say, "Oh, you should read Berserk." I'm like, read it. What? Like, did the shit start in the 80s? You know, like, there's no way I'm gonna sit right here and try to trudge through this labyrinth of a story that really, who knows when it really even gets started. Because usually when manga are that long, the first 10 to 15 chapters is absolutely nothing. It's just a waste of your money. And I'm off subject. But yeah, this is very important. This Meltzerization of wrestling, where people are the best based off a very, very narrow sample of an audience. Which, again, I said this in my Kazuchika Okada is not the best wrestler of all time video. Japan is a small territory. Japan is an island, you know. So you can get over, and everybody who would really be like a superstar. Like this would make Kenny Omega a little bit different, because Kenny Omega is Canadian. So he kind of went over to Japan and focused a lot on getting over in Japan, even learning the language. Like, he really kind of adopted that culture from head to toe, you know, even going through the Sephiroth one-winged angel thing. So he kind of just really adopted being Japanese and kind of melded in a way where Kenny Omega didn't feel like a foreigner. But, you know, for the most part, it's easy to get over in Japan if you're Japanese, because it's not a diverse population. And I don't mean diverse in a progressively political way. I mean, everybody looks the fucking same. Everybody has the same cultural norms. Everything is the same. As opposed to the United States, where there is, you know, 6 different ethnic groups within a small population. Like I live in Detroit. So you have, Detroit is a mostly black city. The suburbs are mostly white. Within the black city of Detroit, you have a whole section of the town which is Polish, another section of the town which is Mexicans, and then in Dearborn you have all of the Arabs. So you have all of these different groups just in my little area of the world. You don't have that in Japan. So when people are like, "Well, so and so was the best wrestler of all time because he worked in Japan," he's Japanese. Who gives a fuck? Okay, he's over in front of his own people. It's like wrestling kind of in your hometown every night, but it's not as diverse. You know, like, you could say the same thing like a white man in the United States getting over me. Stone Cold Steve Austin, what's the big deal, right? But again, you're talking about a far more diverse population. You're talking about not just getting over with redneck hillbilly whites who like to drink beer, but also getting over with the brothers in the hood. We're getting over with the Latinos in the barrio. You know, getting over with the Arabs and all those type people, because that's what the United States is. Okay, and Europe is becoming that way too, but Japan is really not. You know, so you have this monolithic culture that sort of supports kind of one style. I mean, most of the Japanese promotions that Meltzer will put on a pedestal are sports, quote unquote, sports-based promotions. There is there's some comedic promotions in Japan, but they aren't really pushed as far as being top level wrestling audiences and stuff like that. So all of the stuff that you will see Meltzer and all these people push on you will be All Japan, New Japan, and Noah. So it's all the same presentation. It's all the same. So there's no real even diverse presentation of pro wrestling in Japan, But Japanese pro wrestling is good. I like it. I completely agree with Nick Aldis though. I completely agree. Like Japanese wrestling is vegetables. Like some people don't like Brussels sprouts. Some people like candy bars. You don't just shove Brussels sprouts into people's faces and say, well, I'm a high profile, look at me and my sippy cup, my chamomile tea, because I like exquisite pro wrestling. It's like, no, like a lot of these people, and that's why I was going to do a video shitting on Orange Cassidy. I was going to do that. But I was like, you know what? Orange Cassidy, I don't really think that he's pro wrestling. I don't really like him. But you know what? I don't care. It's people like silly shit like that. People like Santino. People like Orange Cassidy. People like Boom Boom Cabana. I don't like that. I don't really care for these guys like that. Like some of this comedy stuff, like R-Truth, I like R-Truth. But a lot of the comedy stuff, I don't really get into. I don't really like it. I don't like the ironic stuff that, certain promotions like to do, like the Orange Cassidy, where people are like, oh, because he's lightly shin kicking people. Like, I don't like that. That's corny to me. But I can't tell people what they can and can't like. And this is usually what we get when it comes to the elitism of the Japanese wrestling fan, is they want to tell you suck for liking WWE, or you suck for liking TNA or ROH or whatever. You suck. You're a lower quality wrestling fan because they like high quality G1 Climax tournaments, which make no sense because why the champion in the tournament? You beat the champion 3 or 4 times in the tournament. Why? That doesn't make any sense. And of course it makes, we can go through this nitpicking all the day, because if the WWE champion gets pinned, oh, well, they don't know what they're doing. I just saw the other day, well, just earlier today, actually, people complaining that Miz and Morrison got pinned on SmackDown after they just won the tag team title. Like, they were wrestling the Usos, who just a week ago, the Usos were saying they were the best tag teams in the world, 8-time tag team champions or whatever, 6-time tag team champions or whatever. It would make sense that they would be better than Miz and Morrison. And then they broke out a new move that nobody had ever seen before, which is the top rope Canadian Destroyer or whatever. But if it had happened in Japan, nobody would have cared. Maybe it's the difference between emotional investment. And I was going to make a video about that too, about attachment and detachment, whether people are truly emotionally invested in these stories or not. And that's neither here nor there, because I think that what helps Japan is that people are not emotionally invested. They can just sit back and look at the athleticism. They don't have to listen to the promos. They don't have to listen to or evaluate promos. They don't have to look at or evaluate character. They can just say, okay, turn this on and just watch guys do flips and weak clotheslines, like the terrible Okada clothesline that they call the Rainmaker. It's a shit clothesline. Okay, if John Cena throws a better clothesline than that, and it's not a finish. Okay, so we can be honest about things, or we can be full of shit about things. And I think that Japanese wrestling fans, a lot of them are full of shit. If you don't like American pro wrestling, and also I would defend them, because sometimes, people who like sort of the Southern good old boy style wrestling, they don't really fuck with Japan either. And that's fair. But, what do you guys think? Do you think Nick Aldis is correct? Or do you think that he's a whiny man baby who, needs to get over it? Like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys.